The SATs were just around the corner, so I was paying a scholarship kid, Chloe Reyes, a ton of money to tutor me. But the day she was supposed to start, she showed up with her childhood friend, Leo, in tow, asking if he could sit in on our sessions. I gently said no, and she didn't press it. But on his way home from my house that day, Leo was hit by a car. The accident left him with a permanent limp, forcing him to drop out and start working dead-end jobs. After that, Chloe kept tutoring me. We both got into good colleges, fell in love, got married, and even started a family. Then came our anniversary, the night we were supposed to be celebrating. Chloe poisoned the soup she made for me. I watched, helpless, as I coughed up blood, the crimson stains spreading across the hardwood floor. "This is for Leo," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "It's what you owe him. Now you get a taste of what it's like to have your future ripped away." It turned out she'd been holding that grudge for years. Then I opened my eyes. I was back on that same day, the day Chloe brought Leo to my house for our first tutoring session. It was our 5th wedding anniversary. The second I walked through the door, I saw a feast laid out on the dining table. Chloe, cradling her stomach, smiled at me. "I have a surprise for you." I thought the surprise was that she was pregnant. I was so overjoyed I could barely think straight. Even when I noticed a faint, strange smell from the bisque she handed me, I didn't suspect a thing. 5 minutes after I finished it, my stomach felt like it was being shredded by glass. "Chloe, my stomach. It hurts so bad." "Hurts? It's supposed to—" Her mask of affection finally dropped, replaced by a smile of pure, chilling cruelty. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead. Then she kicked me hard right in the gut. Our marriage hadn't been a honeymoon cliché, but we'd never even raised our voices at each other, let alone gotten physical. I stared up at her, my gaze a mixture of shock and terror. What was happening? Another dull, agonizing thud as her foot connected with me again. Tears streamed down my face as I begged her to call 911. Instead, Chloe locked the front door and stood over me, her expression cold and appraising. "Chloe, please, help me." I couldn't understand why she was doing this. She was backlit by the living room lamp, her face cast in shadow. If you hadn't ruined everything for Leo that day, he never would have gotten hit by that car. He wouldn't have had to drop out, marry into that woman's family, and live with no self-respect. "This is all your fault, Austin Clark. It's time you learned what it feels like to be completely and utterly alone." She spat the words "utterly alone" with searing intensity. Blood began to trickle from the corner of my mouth, while Chloe's hateful curses washed over me. The pain was unbearable, but through the haze, I started to piece it together from her rambling. Last night, at a work dinner, Chloe had overheard someone talking about how Leo's wife and her family had publicly humiliated him. So this was her solution, to make me suffer everything she imagined he had. That day, all those years ago, all because I said no when she asked if Leo could join our tutoring sessions. She blamed me for the accident, and she'd hated me for it my entire life. If that was true, why marry me? Why let me take care of her, provide for her, love her? I bit my lip, refusing to beg anymore. A pool of red was spreading on the floor beneath me, a river flowing from my own body. My vision started to blur. In agony, I closed my eyes. "Austin, honey, your classmate is here." It was my mom's voice. I snapped my head up from my desk, my hands flying to my mouth and stomach. No blood, no pain. My mom was knocking on my bedroom door. I was still wearing my Northwood High School polo, but the memory of the pain was still seared into my brain, a phantom ache that refused to fade. I sat there, stunned, for what felt like an eternity before I finally grasped what had happened. I had been reborn. In the living room, Chloe Reyes and Leo Vega were perched awkwardly on the edge of our sofa. Just as I remembered, this was the day Chloe brought Leo, asking for a favor, the day all my suffering began in my first life. When she saw me, Chloe shot to her feet. "Austin," she said, her voice tight with anticipation. "Leo's struggling a bit with his grades. Do you think he could join our sessions?" Leo looked at me from under his lashes, a slight frown on his face, as if the whole situation was deeply embarrassing for him. Chloe gently patted his hand, a silent signal for him to relax. I saw every little gesture. Facing their hopeful stares, I gently shook my head. "I'm sorry, but no. This is how it started last time. I said no, and she started to hate me. Leo had transferred to our high school at the beginning of senior year. He had a clean-cut, quiet look about him, and from the moment he introduced himself to the class, Chloe was captivated. His family didn't have much money either. He lived with just his disabled father. Maybe it was a kind of kinship between the kids who were struggling, but they got close fast. Leo, always behind, would bring his test papers covered in red ink over to Chloe's desk. "Chloe," he'd ask meekly, "could you help me with this problem?" She would always take the paper and patiently walk him through it, none of the impatience she showed when tutoring me. One time, after Leo bombed a physics test, he was moping at his desk. Chloe squeezed her way past his deskmate and just sat with him, quietly comforting him for what felt like hours. By evening study hall, a meticulously written packet of physics fundamentals was on his desk. Everyone said they were a perfect match, and that I was just the rich kid trying to buy my way into her life. But that's not why I said no. 3 days before this moment, I'd been in a bathroom stall and overheard Leo talking to his friends. "Dude, Chloe Reyes is so into you. You guys hooking up?" Leo had snorted. "Her, look how broke she is. You think I want to downgrade my life? She's just a tool to help me pass my classes, that's it. Damn, Leo, that's cold. Austin Clark has to pay her to get help. Please." That idiot Austin couldn't learn anything if his life depended on it. Just watch. I'm going to steal her away from him for good. I remember shaking with rage in that stall. At the time, Chloe was so devoted to him, and with senior year being so stressful, I didn't want to upset her. I never told her what I heard. I just tried to gently hint that maybe she should keep her distance from him. That's why, when she asked to bring him to my house, I refused instantly. Leo, feeling insulted, stormed out of my house, ran into the street without looking, and a car shattered his leg. Chloe had screamed at me, her eyes red with fury, and secretly began weaving the web that would eventually strangle me. All my efforts to protect her had been for nothing. It was self-righteous martyrdom that cost me my youth and ultimately my life. Now, I understood a fundamental truth. You can't save people from themselves. It was time to let go and respect their destiny. My refusal made Chloe agitated. "What's the big deal? You're paying me to tutor one person. What's one more? Austin, this is a critical time for us. Can you stop being so selfish for once?" She glared at me, her voice sharp and accusatory. It made me question what I ever saw in her. In high school, Chloe was brilliant and proud, but so poor she sometimes skipped lunch. I didn't even like studying, but I offered her a generous tutoring fee just to give her a way to make money without sacrificing her pride. After graduation, I got her an internship at my dad's company, pulled strings to make her a project manager. After we got married, I handed her the reins to the whole operation. And after all that, she still wanted me dead. How could I possibly make the same mistake again? Leo, meanwhile, was putting on his best puppy dog eyes. "Austin, if I don't get into a good college, my dad's going to make me get a job," he pleaded. "I just want to keep studying. Please, man, it would be like you're saving my life. I'll pay you back. I swear. I'll do anything." Chloe's voice rose to a shout. "Do you want to see him fail? Austin, is that what you want?" I took a few steps back, as if their desperation was a disease I might catch. "Don't be so dramatic. Your life is far too precious for me to be responsible for." I pulled out my phone and, right in front of them, sent Chloe a Venmo. She was still pinned at the top of my text threads. "Gross. That's for this month's tutoring. You don't need to come back," I said calmly. "You can use your time to focus on Leo. I won't get in your way." A flicker of relief crossed Leo's face. His eyes lit up as he looked at Chloe. But Chloe didn't look at him. She stared at me, her brow furrowed as she processed what I'd just done. Her eyes were wide with disbelief. "What did you say? I don't need to come back." In case she didn't get it, I repeated myself, enunciating every word. "Chloe, you don't need to tutor me anymore. Leo clearly needs you more than I do. Otherwise, he won't get into college and, he might die. But I've been tutoring you for 2 years. Aren't you worried you won't get into college without me?" Her voice trembled slightly. "You don't need to worry about that. Please see yourselves out. Last time, even with her tutoring, my grades barely improved. I ended up just going to school abroad for a few years to get a degree. And for my trouble, I got slapped with the label of the guy who crippled Leo. Thinking about it now, I was the world's biggest sucker." Chloe's hands were trembling, her knuckles white. "Fine, Austin," she seethed through gritted teeth. "Don't you dare regret this." With that, She grabbed Leo and stormed out. After that day, Chloe became even more public with her tutoring sessions with Leo. They were always loud, their voices carrying across the classroom, even through my noise-canceling headphones. I had started studying for real now, but I was still working my way through the basics. Leo, as if he couldn't stand the sight of me actually trying, swaggered over with the textbook Chloe had just highlighted for him. "Well, look who decided to start studying," he sneered. "Trying to figure out all by yourself? Getting anywhere with that? I've got Chloe's notes right here. I could let you take a look." He dangled the book in front of me, a contemptuous smile on his face. "Oh wait, my bad. I forgot. Chloe doesn't want to teach you anymore. Guess these notes are off limits then." His voice was shrill, and several classmates glanced over at me. Even Chloe, who usually ignored the world, shot a cool look in our direction. I propped my chin on my hand and looked at him with amusement. "You have time to worry about my study habits, but you can't be bothered to look at your own single-digit physics score?" Leo's face flushed a deep, embarrassed red. Chloe walked over and tapped on my desk. "Can we talk outside?" Before I could refuse, she grabbed my wrist and pulled me out of the classroom. Out in the hallway, she stood with her lips pressed into a thin line. "If you agree to let Leo join, I'll start tutoring you again." Since I'd fired her, I'd heard she was back to working shifts in the cafeteria. She must be broke again, trying to get back on my payroll. She really did see me as a walking ATM. "Not interested," I said without hesitation. Her eyes flashed with anger. She grabbed my shoulders, her grip surprisingly strong. "What's wrong with you? We were fine for 3 years. Is this because I'm spending time with Leo? Are you jealous, Austin? Or is this some kind of game to get my attention?" A few students were starting to gather, whispering and pointing at Chloe's unhinged display. She was a girl, after all, and I didn't want to shove her, so I just tried to reason with her. "I really don't need a tutor anymore. Let go of me." But she just stared, her eyes boring into me, demanding the answer she wanted. That obsessive look reminded me of the woman who'd poisoned me, who'd kicked me while I lay dying. The seeds of that violent extremism were already there, I realized. I had just been blinded by the filter of my crush. Just then, someone tapped Chloe's shoulder. "Hey, genius, the guy said he doesn't need your help. Are you really going to stand here and try to bully him into paying you?" I looked over stunned. It was my desk mate, the class ice queen, Maya Chun. Chloe snapped back to reality, finally realizing what a scene she was making. People were staring. She hated being the center of attention, and now she was. Mortified, she let go of me and hurried back into the classroom. Only then did I really notice Maya. She was my desk mate, but she usually spent class sleeping. She was beautiful, but her perpetually cold expression meant she had no real presence in the classroom. No one dared to approach her. Now I was realizing she was actually pretty cool. Maya was propped on her elbow, looking at me. "Your wrist okay?" I glanced down and saw a faint red mark where Chloe had grabbed me. "It's fine. Thanks for that." Maya suddenly slapped her forehead and started digging through her backpack. After a moment, she pulled out a small tube of hydrocortisone cream. I was surprised. "You just carry this around with you?" She looked away, a little embarrassed. "I had a pimple the other day. The doctor said this stuff works." After a pause, she looked at me seriously. "Why did you suddenly start studying so hard? Did I mess things up for you by sending Chloe away?" I managed a small smile and shook my head. I was serious about studying, but I wasn't so desperate that I needed Chloe and only Chloe. In my first life, my parents had always drilled into me that our family had enough money that I didn't need to kill myself studying. So I never did. I'd cram the night before exams, just enough to not fail spectacularly. Even when I hired Chloe, I was so worried about taking up her study time that I barely asked her for help. We mostly just drank tea and wasted time. I bombed my finals, naturally, and ended up at some art school abroad for a few years. When I came back, my parents immediately started setting me up on blind dates, planning out my entire future for me. For the first time, I rebelled. To dodge a date, I lied and said I had to go to the office. Downstairs, I ran into Chloe, who was there for a job interview. She had offended one of the hiring managers and was in a tight spot. I stepped in and smoothed things over. After that, she started asking me out for dinner, to movies, reminiscing about high school. Under her pursuit, my old teenage crush was rekindled, and we started dating. Once we were serious, I begged my dad to give her the project manager position. 2 years later, she proposed. My parents, seeing that she was a hard worker despite her background, agreed. She used me and my family's company to leapfrog social classes, saving herself years of struggle. But I never imagined that after we were married, she'd look down on me, calling me a trust fund kid with an empty head. She started going against the company's values, jacking up prices on our products just to make a quick profit. When my dad called her out on it, she claimed the whole family depended on her, that the company would collapse without her. And in the end, for Leo, who was feeling sorry for himself and his own marriage, she poisoned me. Reborn, I refused to live at the mercy of someone else's whims ever again. I would take control of my own destiny. I would run my family's company myself. Even though Leo had sworn up and down that he looked down on Chloe, the two of them became more and more inseparable. Before long, they were actually dating. In my past life, to help Chloe ace her finals, I'd supplied her with a steady stream of expensive health supplements and bought any study guide or practice test she wanted. She ended up getting into Harvard, but she credited it all to her own genius. Now, I was morbidly curious to see if the self-proclaimed genius could actually juggle a relationship and her studies at the same time. One afternoon, I walked into the school's water fountain alcove and found Chloe and Leo locked in a kiss. She had her back to me, her arms wrapped tightly around him. Over her shoulder, Leo's eyes met mine, a flicker of mockery in them. He deepened the kiss, letting out a low murmur and raising an eyebrow at me. Unfortunately for them, the dean of students caught them that very day. Our homeroom teacher dragged Chloe into her office, and you could hear her disappointed sighs from down the hall. Since it was a Friday, their punishment was a week's suspension to reflect at home. Leo returned to the classroom looking furious. I don't know if it was my imagination, but he kept glancing in my direction. After school, he deliberately took his time packing up. Chloe was waiting for him outside the classroom door while I was trying to solve a monster of a math problem. "Was it you?" Leo's voice was low, his eyes full of contempt. "Did you rat us out?" Before I could answer, he added, "No matter what dirty tricks you pull, Chloe is still mine. You lost." He slung his backpack over his shoulder like a conquering hero and walked out, looping his arm through Chloe's as they swaggered away. Watching their silhouettes against the setting sun, I felt a strange sense of déjà vu. The first time I'd ever noticed Chloe was on an evening just like this. My family's calico cat had run off, and I'd been searching everywhere for it. I finally found her outside a 7-11. Chloe was crouched down, feeding my cat a piece of Slim Jim. The setting sun cast a soft halo of light around her. From that day on, I started paying attention to Chloe. She was smart, number one in our class, but I heard her family was struggling. She worked in the cafeteria just to get a decent meal, but she was too proud to accept charity. So I came up with a plan. I'd pay her to tutor me on weekends. Chloe agreed, but she had her principles. She would only accept $1,000 a month, not a penny more. It wasn't really tutoring. We mostly just did our homework together. I'd occasionally ask her a question so she wouldn't get suspicious. But ever since Leo came into the picture, even those occasional questions started to annoy her. She'd call me stupid, say I had poor comprehension, that I just wasn't cut out for STEM. She'd completely forgotten who had helped her when she was at her lowest. 7, when I finally cracked the math problem, I twisted my stiff neck. The sky had grown dark, and a light rain had begun to fall. I quickly packed my bag and headed for the door. But it wouldn't budge. I pulled and pulled, but it was locked. "Hello, anyone there?" It was long past school hours, and the security office was on the other side of campus. As expected, only the whistling wind answered me. It's true what they say. In moments of panic, your mind becomes clearer. I suddenly remembered that Leo and I had been the last 2 people in the classroom. He must have been the one to lock the door. Just as I was about to lose hope, I heard a voice outside the classroom. The person sounded surprised. "Is someone still in here at this hour?" The familiar voice was like music to my ears. I felt tears welling up. Maya, I'm locked in here." I yelled. Maya tried the door from the outside and confirmed it was locked. She told me not to panic. "Hang on, I'll go get the janitor to open it." Finally, the door swung open. But in that exact moment, a massive clap of thunder shook the building, and all the lights in the classroom went out. "Ah!" Maya screamed, clapping her hands over her ears and instinctively diving into my arms. I froze, my hands hovering awkwardly in the air. As the thunder faded, Maya pulled away, her face bright red. Sorry, it's okay. For some reason, my heart was racing. The emergency lights in the hallway cast a faint glow into the room. Let's go, Maya stuttered, holding out her hand to me. It was still raining outside. We walked under one umbrella, the silence between us a little awkward. Were you coming back for something? I asked just to say something. Maya held up the book in her hand. It was a math competition prep book. This is embarrassing, but I was stuck in the classroom because I was trying to solve a math problem. I kicked at a loose stone on the sidewalk. Maya let out a small laugh. I used to just bury my head in problems like that too. But once you learn a few tricks, you realize math is actually pretty simple. If you're interested, I could share my secrets. Her tone was casual, but her expression was serious, her eyes fixed on me. Yeah, okay. The rain gradually lessened, and by the time we were near my house, it had stopped completely. I saw my mom peering out the front door from a distance. I quickly said goodbye to Maya and ran over. My mom was worried, asking why I was so late. I told her everything that had happened. My mom is famously protective. She told me not to worry and immediately went into her room to call my uncle, who was on the school board. The school's response was swift. After reviewing the security footage, they confirmed that Leo had left and then secretly returned to lock me in the classroom. Because it was a malicious act, the school decided to extend his 1-week suspension to a full month and put a formal disciplinary action on his permanent record. The next few weeks were blissfully peaceful, with Chloe and Leo out of my sight, and with Maya's sharp, insightful guidance. The part of my brain that had been dormant for years suddenly roared to life. I wasn't as hopeless as Chloe had made me believe. When I actually applied myself, I could see results. I saw Chloe again a week later. She looked more haggard than before, with dark circles under her eyes. Being suspended for a high school romance must not have been easy, but the experience didn't humble her. Instead, she came to find me, demanding that I go to the teachers and tell them the whole thing was a misunderstanding. Leo just accidentally locked the door when he was leaving. He didn't do it on purpose. Austin, do you really have to be so vindictive? Are you trying to ruin him? It was laughable. The security cameras showed everything. So Leo had accidentally snuck back into the school and accidentally pulled the door shut and accidentally thrown the bolt. There was no point in arguing. Some people only believe what they want to believe. Well, I was accidentally locked in for an hour, and my parents accidentally found out I was home late. If you have a problem with the consequences, you can take it up with my uncle on the school board. My tone was final. Chloe stormed off, but she wasn't done. She went straight to the principal's office. According to the gossip from a student who was dropping off papers, Chloe actually tried to bargain with the principal, saying that if they didn't let Leo come back to school, she wouldn't come back either. A talented student is a valuable asset, but our school had plenty of them. And right now, everything she was doing screamed that she was anything but a genius. True to her word, Chloe started skipping school with Leo. But her protest didn't soften the administration's stance. Instead, it just made her the butt of school jokes. Can you believe Chloe is actually ditching school for Leo? So romantic. Romantic? It's senior year. That's not romantic, it's insane. I saw her after school the other day. She was smoking with Leo and a bunch of those burnout girls in an alley. No way. The former academic superstar has fallen that far. She's missed so much class. I wonder if she can even keep her grades up. The practice SATs are coming up. I'm so nervous. Beside me, Maya poked me. You feel confident about the practice test? Of course I was. Even if I was a little nervous inside, I couldn't show it. I answered her with mock seriousness. Don't worry, master. I will hand in a performance worthy of your tutelage and show you the fruits of my month-long labor. Maya had been incredibly generous with her help, practically pouring her heart and soul into teaching me. I'd also discovered that while she was a prodigy in math and science, her one weakness was English. She claimed she was too lazy to memorize vocabulary. Besides, she didn't need the SATs anyway. Her math competition scores could get her into any school she wanted. Chloe and Leo's suspension eventually ended, but Chloe no longer seemed to care about her studies. I heard she had started a side hustle with those burnout girls, selling unlocked streaming devices. It was a sketchy business, but it was making her some money. She grew more and more restless and started cutting class 2 or 3 times a week to run her little operation. The seating for the practice SAT was randomized. By a strange coincidence, I was seated in a row with Chloe and Leo like a bead on a string, right between the two of them. Chloe approached me before the test, asking me to pass answers to Leo. You can copy my answers too, as payment, she offered. I was floored by her audacity. Chloe, have you completely lost it? When did you start resorting to cheating? I said, rejecting her offer outright. Chloe paused, her lips tightening. Please, I'm begging you. If Leo bombs this test, his dad will kill him. Sorry, not happening. Maya appeared at my side. If your boyfriend actually want a good grade, he'd have to put in the work like my apprentice here does every single day. A look of surprise crossed Chloe's face. Apprentice? Austin, you. I looked Chloe straight in the eye. Don't ask me to get involved in this kind of self-destructive nonsense. And from now on, leave me out of your problems. With that, I turned away, not bothering to watch the color drain from her face. The test went by in a blur. The difficulty was what I'd expected. I couldn't solve all the hard problems, but overall, it went smoothly. When the scores were posted, Maya eagerly pushed through the crowd to see the list, then came back grinning. Little apprentice, guess how many spots you jumped in the rankings? 10 to 15. I asked, still reviewing my test booklet. How did you guess so accurately? You're no fun. Because I'm a genius. I looked up just in time to see Chloe, her face ashen, pushing her way out of the crowd. Your former goddess is ranked right near you this time, Maya whispered, laughing. Don't call her that. You're going to make me sick. The disgusted look on my face was impossible to hide. So embarrassing. Leo, as usual, was at the bottom of the list. But the speed of Chloe's decline was shocking. I had jumped 15 spots, and she had dropped 15 spots. She was now only 2 places ahead of me. Many students were already giving her pitying looks, lamenting the fall of the star student. Chloe sat at her desk, her head bowed, radiating a dark, gloomy energy. Suddenly, there was a sharp snap. She had broken her pen in half. Soon after, the day of Maya's big math competition arrived. As a dedicated apprentice, I walked her to the testing center entrance. Double-check your bag. Make sure you have everything, I reminded her. Maya opened her folder dramatically for me to inspect. All gear present and accounted for, see? But the check turned up a disaster. Her official admission ticket had been replaced with a blank piece of paper. What the hell? Which son of a bitch did this? Maya yelled. Luckily, I had anticipated something like this might happen, so I had printed a backup copy of her ticket. I helped her put it in her folder and hurried her into the testing center. After watching her disappear into the crowd, I turned and walked down a narrow alley to a dark corner. As I expected, there was someone lurking there, wearing a black face mask and a baseball cap, who had been secretly following us for a while. Even with the disguise, I recognized her. It was Chloe. When she saw me approaching, she panicked and tried to walk past me, pretending she didn't know me. I know it was you. She brushed past my shoulder without stopping. Don't you think that was a pathetic move? Still no response. Chloe, everything you're doing right now is disgusting. I honestly regret ever helping you. I yelled after her. Chloe's footsteps halted. She turned to face me, slowly pulling off her hat and mask. Her expression was verging on madness. She screamed at me, her voice raw and hysterical. I wanted her to miss the competition. So what? Are you both panicking now, like ants in a hot pan? What are you so proud of? My test score was just a fluke, but you and Maya will always be beneath me. And that pathetic little bit of money you gave me. It wasn't even enough to live on. The money I'm going to make, you can't even imagine. Chloe turned and fled. And as I watched her shrinking figure, I felt no pity. The proud, brilliant girl I once admired was well and truly gone. Maya said she'd absolutely crushed the competition and wanted to go get tacos to celebrate. As we were eating at a taco truck, I saw Chloe and Leo across the street, holding hands as they walked into a dingy motel. Later that night, Leo posted a picture of himself and Chloe on his Instagram story. The background was unmistakably that motel room. The picture caused another wave of gossip among our classmates. They were flaunting their fiery, reckless teenage love. And I was clutching the last few months of my youth, my head buried in textbooks, not wasting a single second. Soon it was time for the first official mock SAT. I was rubbing my hands together, promising Maya that this time I'd crack the top 10. Even though Maya had already secured her spot in college through the competition, She insisted on staying to take the SATs with everyone else. It puzzled me, but she wouldn't tell me why. On the day of the mock exam, Chloe and Leo didn't show up. 2 days later, we found out what happened. The day before the exam, they had a huge fight over something trivial. It escalated into one of their dramatic scenes. She runs, he chases. Maybe the anger clouded Leo's judgment. He didn't see the large truck barreling down the road. By the time he noticed, he just froze, standing motionless in the middle of the street. Chloe reacted instantly. She tackled him, and they went rolling to the side of the road. Their momentum only stopped when her back slammed into a large decorative boulder on the sidewalk. Chloe was rushed to the hospital. The initial diagnosis was a fractured vertebra. The doctors said she would likely never be able to do any heavy lifting again. Our teacher sent Maya and me as student representatives to visit Chloe in the hospital with a fruit basket. We could hear them arguing from down the hall. Chloe, with a brace around her waist, was painfully trying to sit up, clinging to Leo's arm and begging him not to leave. Leo looked at her with disgust, trying to shake her off. "Chloe, how many times do I have to say it? We're over." Her voice was hoarse. "What about our future? You promised we'd always be together." "The future? What kind of future can you give me now? Look at yourself. It's a miracle you have a future at all." Chloe still wouldn't let go. "Leo, what about our baby? Are you really going to let our child be born without a father?" Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. They were that reckless. A baby before they even graduated? Leo just laughed coldly. "The baby, huh? You lost a baby, Chloe. Didn't you know? Just leave me alone. Let's just go our separate ways." That final sentence was a devastating blow. It was as if all the strength left Chloe's body. Her hand fell from his arm, and she covered her face, her shoulders shaking with quiet sobs. Leo walked out of the room without a moment's hesitation. When he saw Maya and me in the hallway, he flinched, then shot me a venomous glare before stalking off without a backward glance. After that day, Chloe was a different person. She wasn't fully recovered, but she dragged her injured body back to school. The hospital bills for her back injury and the miscarriage had wiped out all the money she'd saved from her streaming device hustle. She stopped contacting her old burnout friends. She went back to her simple, frugal routine, her head buried in books all day, as if trying to become the focused, brilliant student she once was. But we all knew something had fundamentally changed. The Chloe who once reigned supreme in physics class, who could answer any question with effortless confidence, now couldn't even bring herself to raise her hand for the most basic problems. The 3 months she'd lost were a fatal blow to her academic career, especially in the final, frantic stretch of senior year. Learning is like rowing against the current. If you don't advance, you fall back. Chloe was the perfect illustration of that. For the rest of the year, I didn't pay attention to anyone else. I burned the midnight oil, arriving at school before dawn and leaving long after sunset, my efforts far surpassing even Chloe's most intense periods of study. After the second mock exam, Maya looked at my scores and nodded. "You got a shot at a top-tier public school, like UCLA, she said. After the third, she gave me a thumbs up. "You might even have a shot at an Ivy." On the day of the real SATs, Maya clapped me on the shoulder. "I'm in the testing room right next to you. Don't be nervous." A joke. I'd lived 2 lives. How could I be nervous? But sitting in the silent exam room before the tests were handed out, my hands were shaking uncontrollably. I knew exactly how much work I had put into this. I just wanted it to pay off. The SATs went well. 3 weeks later, the scores were released. I had done better than I ever had before. I had the scores for a top public university. Maya's English score was still terrible, so she ended up using her competition results to get into Harvard. As for Chloe, her back injury flared up during the exam. She performed horribly, not even scoring high enough to get into a 4-year state college. Chloe wanted to take a gap year and try again, but that would cost money. Without my funding, her life had reverted to its original state of poverty, and she was fighting with her family about it. Leo didn't even take the SATs. He was now officially with the girl who had been the ringleader of Chloe's old side hustle crew, becoming the king to her queen in their little gang. I heard Chloe, desperate for money for her gap year, went to find the girl, asking to get back into the business. But she arrived just in time to see Leo and the girl in a passionate kiss. Chloe flew into a rage and started a fist fight. The result was that Chloe got beaten up and lost her last chance to make some money. For years flew by. I graduated from UCLA with a business degree and successfully took over my dad's company. Maya had started her own company in college, and she was now my primary business partner. One night, we were out for a client dinner. We'd both had a little too much to drink, so we called a designated driver service to take us home in my car. After the driver pulled into my garage, she just sat there, not leaving. She stared at me for a long time before asking, "Austin Clark, don't you remember me?" I looked closely, and only after a long moment did I recognize the ghost of Chloe Reyes in her features. In just a few years, streaks of gray had appeared in her hair, and her face was etched with lines of hardship. Maya, sensing we needed to talk, quietly stepped out of the car and gave us some space. "Austin," Chloe began, her voice shaky. "You're not going to believe this, but ever since we graduated, I've been having these dreams. It's like a parallel world, with us in it. Especially this past year, the dreams have become so vivid, I can piece them together into a coherent memory. In the dream, you protected me from Leo. You were always there for me, supporting me. I got into Harvard. After I graduated, I went to interview at your dad's company, and I ran into you again. We fell in love. Naturally, we even got married. Do you know, Austin? That memory is so real. Sometimes I can't tell which is the dream and which is reality. In my dream, our future was so perfect. Why did it turn out like this?" As she spoke, her body began to tremble. She clutched her head and started to scream. Why? Why did it have to be like this? She began pounding her fists on the steering wheel over and over. Her state was beyond distress. She had completely unraveled. Sensing Chloe's mental state was unstable, Maya quickly guided me out of the garage. That was the last I saw of her. I don't know what became of Chloe, but my life moved on. The patents from Maya's company integrated perfectly with my company's core products, creating a self-sufficient and streamlined production chain. With our costs drastically reduced, the company grew rapidly. Within 2 years, we opened 3 new branches in neighboring cities. The next time I saw Chloe, it was on the national news. She had stalked and kidnapped a man, holding him captive in a small cabin by the sea. She tortured him for 20 days before dismembering his body and dumping it in the ocean. The man in the news report was Leo Vega. The smell of a home-cooked meal drifted in from the kitchen. Maya had prepared a wonderful dinner. She came up behind me and wrapped her arms around my waist. "Anything interesting on the news tonight?" she asked softly. I changed the channel and leaned back into her embrace. "Nah, nothing important. The holidays were just around the corner." The house was filled with the warm scent of dinner, and outside, snow was beginning to fall, dusting the bare branches of the trees. It looked like it was going to be a good year.